Oh, you're not going to screen share?
I am in a minute.
Good evening and welcome to Beginners Academy. Tonight we have a topic about WWV and calibrating a radio. And our presenter tonight is Chris, VA3ECO, coming to us from Ontario. So take it away, Chris.
Okay, so we're looking at as I mentioned, my whole TS2000, unlike you guys with your fancy new radios. So we'll start off just by listening to WWV, and hopefully we've got it so you can hear it. And you can hear it ticking in the background.
Yes.
And eventually they're going to play us a tone. Now I'm going to go to upper sideband. We're on AM right now. You guys probably can't read that, but it says AM.
Beginning November 15, 2021, this will be broadcasting a test.
That's lower sideband. Upper sideband. So they put out a tone every once in a while throughout the minute. In fact, I'm going to do a quick screen share and show you a chart on that. This is the hour of WWV, I think. And what they do throughout the hour, they change it up a little bit from one time or another. This is the minute. So they do a special announcement, or they do a 500 hertz tone. Then they go back to the ticking. Then they go back to the time of day at 52 seconds into the minute. Then the next minute they start off with a 600 hertz tone. Then they go back to the ticking. Then they go back to the universal time. So for listening to your radio, you can wait for the tone to come up, and we'll talk in a minute about what you do with that. But I found an easier way to do that is taking the fact that it's got an AM transmitter on these things. Oh, before we leave that, what frequency are they on? They're on 2.5, 5, 10, 15, 20. They're also on 25. It's a new experimental channel. You won't hear much audio on that, but the carrier is on almost all the time on 25 megahertz. And this is the power that they develop. So the 5, 10, and 15 are 10 kilowatt stations. So they're pretty healthy stations. So what are they putting out? They're putting out an AM signal, going back to basics. Everyone remembers this from studying in your license. A 600 hertz tone, if they were at 28,400, which they're not, but let's say they were, they would have a 28,400 or 28,400.600. So around here would be, no, actually about here would be a tone. And there'd also be a tone on lower sideband. And in between is a carrier. Now the carrier we can't hear because it's down at 0 hertz. So when I went to upper sideband, we're listening to this. Lower sideband, we're listening to that. So what I do is I go to upper sideband, and the carrier is still there. It's down at 0 hertz. I'm not going to hear it. But what if I shifted the frequency of my radio down 1 kilohertz? Then that carrier would now pop up at 1000 hertz right about here. So I'm going to do that. And while I do that, I'm going to run WSJT software so you can see visually what's happening. So I'm going to go, and we're on an FT8 here right now. And I'm going to go to upper sideband, and I'm turning down. There, I'm 1 kilohertz down, and there we are with the tone. So you can still hear the ticking and stuff, but you can hear a very strong 1000 hertz tone. I'm going to turn my now I'm going to go to lower sideband. If you kind of remember what pitch that was on, now I'm going to take it up a notch. Now I'm 1,000 hertz up on lower sideband. You can see I'm at 10 megahertz plus 1 kilohertz. I'm going to go back to upper sideband. And back to lower sideband. Now, I hope you guys can hear the tones okay, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you hear they're different?
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, because this radio is out of tune. It's actually
Oh.
quite badly out of tune.
Okay.
And that's quite famous for the TS2000. So what we can do is listen to those tones. If it's that far out, maybe you need to do something about it. If you're just on phone on the lower bands or CW, this isn't really that important to worry about. But if you're moving up into digital modes, especially at 6 meters and 2 meters, and not FT8, but any of the other digital modes, MSK 144 for meteor scatter, or for Q65 like Greg and I was doing for aircraft scatter, this frequency offset's enough to miss the other station altogether, especially when you get up to VHF. Now, not all radios will do HF and VHF, but this one will. Jim's Jim's new radio will. The FT991A will. So this would be applicable to all those radios. So what I'm going to do now is show you a mode on WSJT that helps you tweak this thing. And it's called FreqCal. I click on that. Now it's jumped down to a low frequency. It's got a routine where it jumps through low band, medium band, high bands. I'm going to force it back to where we were. I'm going to put 10 megahertz in there. I'm going to put it at, I'm going to put my cursor at 1,000. In fact, I'll dial it right here so that we're receiving at exactly 1,000. And I'm going to put my radio. I'm now on lower sideband again. I'm going to clear my screen. Every 3 seconds, it's going to take a reading. And here's my measurement right here. So I'm quite a few hertz out there. Now I'm going to take my frequency and I'm going to go down and then go to upper sideband. And there's my frequency now. So I'm about 22, 23 hertz out, upper versus lower. And that's not a good thing. Yaesu, the little Yaesu that I bought from Greg, I was doing this same test on it. It was 5 hertz out. So even a modern radio like the 817, or more modern compared to this TS2000, can be out quite a bit. The 9700, you don't have the opportunity to listen to WWV, but if you've got a friend who you know has got a calibrated radio, you can get him to put out a tone and do the same test against his radio, like someone owns a Flex or something like that that you know is rock solid, or someone who's had the radio recent calibrated by a shop, let's say. So where do we go from here? I want to show you that we got a 22 hertz error there. I'm going to go to a different WWV station. Let's go up to, and I hope we can hear it this late at night. Now, it's a lot noisier because it's getting late in the day for this high frequency. I'll turn the volume down. But you notice we went from a 22 hertz error to a 42 hertz error by going from 10 megahertz to 20 megahertz. So the higher WWV station you can find, the more accurate this test is. The highest they've got is the 25. Let's see if we can hear it tonight. 25. By the way, if you want to manually enter a frequency on FT8 or any of the digital modes, you just type it into this box, hit enter, and there way it goes. Okay, here's what it sounds like on the speaker. It's almost all noise, but the tone is there, and we can see that tone in the waterfall right here. And we've jumped up, our error is now jumped up to 50 hertz. So extrapolating this, if I was on the 6 meter band at 50.313, let's say, I'd be 100 hertz out. On the VHF band at 144, let's say, I'd be, if I'm doing the math right, 300 hertz out. The Q65 pass band, you typically got it set to about 100 hertz, so you would miss the station altogether. Same thing on MSK 144. Even on FT8, you'd be not in the waterfall where you think you are. Now FT8, it doesn't matter because you arbitrarily pick a spot, and where you are and where the other guy is isn't that important. But on any other bands or other modes, this thing is critical. It's at to the point with 100 hertz out on 6 meters, my voice doesn't sound right, and the other voice doesn't. It sounds too high, and I sound too low. So I've actually got to retune this thing on those bands. I'm going to jump back to lower sideband now and offset it the other way. So now I'm at 25.001, so that's 1 kilohertz up. And we can see that now that the carrier is now here. By the way, the 25 kilohertz WWV has got no, I shouldn't say it's got no, but it rarely has the voice and the clock ticking. It's experimental right now. They leave the carrier on all the time, but you won't really hear the tones or the weather or the UTC announcements on this one, but it is still there. All you'll hear is the carrier on this one 90% of the time. Any questions where we've gone so far? I'm going back to lower sideband. So there's a couple things you can do if your radio's in error. You can get out the shop manual, or you can Google if it's got an adjustment you can make. Now, some of the new radios, like Greg's 9700, has got a software adjustment for this to calibrate it. The FT817-857 has got a little variable capacitor that's easy to get at. This TS2000 also has a variable, I think it's a pot that I can get at, and I mean to do that. What I've done on this radio instead, and let's clear the screen and let it ride. So we're looking at 1052. What I've done instead is I've gone into File, Settings, Frequencies, and there's a slope adjust here. And what I found previously, if I put in 2.26 parts per million, no, I guess I didn't do that right because we're not right. 2.26. That should have worked. Oh, because I went into the menu, it jumped me up to 1500. Okay, so we're off. I got to get back to where I was. So let's put in 1,000. Let's go back to our band. 25.000. Yeah, it took over the VFO of the radio and messed me up there. And let's put 1,000 hertz in here. And let's see what comes up. Oh, and I got to turn this down. So I got to put my radio at 24.999. And there I am at 997 roughly, 997. So now I'm 3 hertz out. So with that little fudge factor I put in, I'm coming very close to 1,000. So it's still not calibrated quite right. So that's the display that it's displaying the actual frequency, 1 kilohertz down from 25. And I'm going to go back on this camera here to show you the radio is actually at 24.9905. So that the dial of the radio is not the same as this frequency here, but this is the correct one. The one on the radio is incorrect. And I just operate that way. So when I do my digital modes on UHF, VHF, and 6 meters, my dial of my radio is not correct, but the actual frequency is correct on the WSJT screen. So that's doing it with a fudge factor. And again, it's File, Settings, under Frequencies. And you can play with this until you're getting the right frequency. Or you can take the cover off the radio or find the software number and correct it there. So that's looking at the calibration of a radio with WWV. Some radios are right on the money, some aren't so hot. This one is notoriously bad, the TS2000. This came up to me the first time I was working a guy, Meteor Scatter, who wanted my grid really badly. And we'd worked on 6 meters previously, and then he said, I'd love to get your grid on 2 meters. So we went up to 2 meters. I could not copy him at all. And I said, I can hear your tones when a meteor comes by. It was during a shower. And I said, I can hear your signal, but I'm not copying. And he says, let's go back to 6. And he sent me the signal, and then he looked at the frequency. Sorry, I sent a signal. He looked at my frequency. He says, when you go up to 2 meters, punch this number in on your dial of your radio, and bang, it worked fine. And I realized that was my problem, as my frequency was out of calibration. And since then, I did it through this this setting here, where we are, and just lived with that. But I'm going to take the cover off this radio in the coming weeks and try to get it tuned up right. Any questions on that? I don't know if I went too fast or whether it's confusing or not.
Yeah, while you're explaining all this, explain how you can be calling CQ and then copy your own CQ. How does that work?
That was a strange one. I don't know.
Well, I read about it on the internet, and it's possible, and it happened to me twice already.
Yeah.
I just don't know how it happens. I don't know how I can be.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Receiving my own signal at the same time.
Yeah. No,
that's what the computer says.
You sent me a screenshot, and I looked at that, and I thought, what the heck is going on there? So Jim was calling CQ, and he heard himself. And you think about it, while you're transmitting CQ, your radio's in transmit. So to hear yourself, it would have to pick up the audio while it's transmitting. But
it came in the same time frame. In other words,
the software should know.
Transmitting is one color, it's red, and the CQ receiving is green. That's how I could tell whether I'm receiving or transmitting. And they both came in like they were transmitted and received at the same time.
People are saying it's reflecting in the sound card, but that doesn't make sense either, because the software should know not to listen while it's transmitting.
Well, I read what they have on the internet about it, and I haven't understood anything yet.
Yeah.
But apparently it does happen to many different people.
So that's it for my my discovery of WWV tuning last week before I burnt up the radio that I had set up so nicely.
Well, it's been very informative, Chris.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Any questions for Chris before we wind it up?
What are we gonna do when they turn off WWV?
Oh, we'll be in trouble.
There's talk about it, yeah.
What about all the Casio watches that everybody bought that was controlled and everything from that?
I've got a clock right on my bureau over here that listens for it.
I just set one that's an atomic clock. I had
Yeah.
to put the right time zone in it.
Yeah, by the way, your atomic clock, that's what it does. It's listening for that WWV.
Yeah.
Besides the,
It's right on. It's right dead on, I tell you.
there is a 100 hertz subtone that's got a binary coded decimal time imprinted on it.
We've got your Canadian equivalent of WWV. What's it called? CHH or something like
CHU.
that? CHU, okay.
Where's that located? Down in Toronto or something?
Well, I don't know where it is, but you
Well,
copy it on 40 meters.
What about all the ships at sea and the airplanes and everything that use WWV? They're all gonna be running into each other?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jim Nelson's checking out. See you, Jim.
Maybe we could buy the station and put it back on the air.
Well, we'll see if that comes back up.
We could buy the frequency.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Chris, for the presentation. And
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I never seen it done that way before. I didn't realize that we could use WWV out like that.
Yeah, it's a nice little utility they put in there.
I'm not sure I want to know how far my radio is off though. After all the thousands of dollars I've spent, I would hope that it's pretty close.
All right. Well, tonight we had a topic. Next time we'll have show and tell Q&A. So we like to do this particularly for beginners and returning hams. So 73.